Motion to approve the November minutes.
So moved.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, go ahead.
Well, about the minutes. Since we don't have an actual report from, Tallahassee, is it possible to, outline in the minutes any concerns that we've expressed? Is that possible? Like the committee or the DOGE council expressed concerns on XYZ? Possible? Have some sort of recording of it?
Do we have it in the minutes at all? To reflect that?
It just says that there were talking points, like on the, like, you know, the HR discussed this, you know, we discussed this in the film thing, but the film thing was kind of still open-ended.
Yeah.
We had discussed. So I just want to make sure that there's some record that we've expressed concerns on several issues.
We can pull that as a separate document if you want and go from there. It might be because this is supposed to just reflect the one meeting. So
Do you want to just amend that? You can amend the minutes to reflect that was, I mean, it was discussed. I know it was discussed.
We can do
So,
And we didn't feel that we had adequate resolution on it either. So since we don't have a platform to the community, I was hoping that there would just be some record of.
that's fine.
Okay.
We can do that.
so do I have to have a motion to amend the minutes?
Sorry, can we just pause for a second? We don't have a third.
Yeah, I was about to say the same
So,
thing. We need
We
a,
can be in position just to approve it when Bob gets here.
Okay. These guys don't count over here.
you have to have a physical quorum present in order to take action.
Gotcha.
If you just defer until he gets here. But we heard you, Rebecca. We'll add that in.
Okay, so we'll table that motion until Bob gets here. Update on status of Florida DOGE team report. So I don't have an update on the Florida DOGE team report. I've not heard anything differently. I've tried to reach out over the past couple days to see if we can get a timeline. I've not heard anything back. There's been no reports that have been issued to any other counties around Florida. When our CFO came down here, he said that it would be done in a few weeks. That was 2 months ago. Now we're going to run into Christmas and everything. I'm assuming we're not going to see anything the rest of the year. I think that's a safe assumption. That's the update on the Florida DOGE report.
The staff side, we haven't heard anything either. We concur with your findings. We haven't heard from any other local governments. We would just, we know there was a report on Palm Beach County, or at least a press conference in Palm Beach County last week.
Mhm.
And then before that, there was a press conference in Orlando. And the CFO created a distinction between the Florida DOGE team audit and what's now being called FAFO audits. So don't have a lot of clarity of what that means yet, but to your point, we have not seen or heard anything to this point.
Okay. Any other comments from anyone on Zoom?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
It'd just be nice to know what they're doing.
Would be nice.
I guess that's the real question. Is there a point in time that we're going to make a statement as a committee about that?
So to answer that question, I think we're going to probably get into that at the rest of this meeting. That my intention, if we continue to hear nothing, we'll kind of say that at some point soon. I would, we can have a discussion about it, but I would say by January at some point, we should be issuing some sort of formal statement that says, hey, we've got to do something, or we're not getting anything, or some version of what this committee feels. And we can work on that.
I'd like to do that now. I think there's been a lot of talk and no action by our CFO as to Hillsborough County, and we've been given a task to do. And basically, my view of it is that because of the state's involvement, we've got our hands tied as to what we can do, and we've only got a few months left.
I would agree. I mean, the rest of the board can tell me how they feel, but personally, I agree with you, Cliff. I mean, I would be fine with issuing a statement out of this meeting with basically saying that our efforts are being hamstrung by the fact that we don't have a state report, and we keep getting told that we need to wait for a state report. And that's where all the power lies in in searching for all this stuff. So I'm fine with drafting up a statement as a
I'd-
board.
I'd
after
certainly
this.
be in favor of that.
Thoughts from the rest of the committee?
Yeah, absolutely. Great.
I'm fine with that
But I
as
would-
well.
What I would recommend is when you have your physical quorum present, is that you put that in in a motion and take an official action.
Okay.
And proceed forward under that.
Okay, so we have to wait for Bob to do a motion on that. He should be here soon enough. But are you guys going to be okay if I can write something up and pass it around to the committee, and we can kind of come up with a yes or no on it after this meeting? That's okay, right?
You can put something out there.
Yeah.
And then if anybody has any comments, they should direct those comments to staff.
Okay,
And, staff can make whatever those changes are and then produce a final.
Okay.
For you to sign.
Okay.
But yeah, just no back and, keep.
no back and forth. to the
Yeah,
rest of the board.
I just want to make sure, you can't go back and forth on the emails. So that's the thing you got to be cognizant of.
Okay, so process wise, then I can create a statement as chair, give it to you guys as staff. You can pass it along to the rest of the board. They can add any comments that they have.
Correct.
I can edit to a
Yeah,
final.
then a final version will be sent to you for your signature. But as I said, I would recommend that you wait to be able to put that in the form of a motion
Yeah,
when you've got your physical quorum present.
sure. Okay. I'm fine with that. I think that is the next logical step. Again, I mean, I wanted to go in front of the commission this month or last month or when they were going to do their budget for the year. So I'm fine with doing something now. I just, hopefully it won't get lost in the holiday shuffle or anything. But if we do it soon enough, then maybe I don't know, well received is the right word, but it'll be received. Okay. So we're going to go back to that one too when Bob gets here to do a final motion, but let's move on to the presentation on the litigation expenses. So Rob or Julia, whoever's taken on the,
I've asked Rob Razel, who's the chief of the litigation section of the county attorney's office, and also been involved in these items for his career with the county, to kind of give you the background. And he's looked at the minutes, he's looked at the tape probably as well, and just understands, what the questions have been.
All right, for the record, I'm Rob Brazel, Chief Assistant County Attorney for litigation.
welcome, Bob.
Sorry, guys. I do apologize.
It's all good. You're just, Just in
Unexpected
time.
South County traffic nightmare. The explanation I can give.
you're down, here just in time to start the, presentation on the litigation expenses. And then we're going to go back to a couple motions that, actually, you know what? Why don't we do this? Why don't we, before we get to yours, let's go back because we had to wait for a physical quorum to do a couple of different motions that were on the table.
All right.
So Rebecca, did you want to motion to amend the minutes and then we can approve the minutes?
Yes. I don't know how to do that.
Official, yeah, I just need an official motion, like you motion to amend
To
the,
move to amend the minutes, is that what I say?
yes, to say, to reflect our conversations.
Motion to amend the minutes for November to reflect concerns of the DOGE committee from last month.
Okay. Do you have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. So motion passes. So Brandon, if you could just edit the minutes, or whoever's editing the minutes for last month, to just reflect the conversation that we had regarding our state comments. What the other thing that you missed, just the first few minutes, talking about this update on the status on the Florida DOGE report. Obviously,
Yeah.
we don't have one. Cliff suggested that we put out a statement soon,
Yeah.
basically saying that we're kind of hamstrung by the fact that we don't have a report, and that's prevented us from doing what we need to do here. So if anyone would like to make a motion for me, Cliff, to
moved.
what we want to basically, I'm gonna write something up. I've got to hand it to staff. Staff will hand it to the
Okay.
rest of you to edit.
All right.
Do I have, can
I'll second.
second? Second by Bob. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. So we will have a statement drafted up. Today's Tuesday, so yeah, probably this week. We'll have it out by this week. All right. Sorry. Presentation on the litigation expenses.
I'm back. Okay.
Back all up. Yeah.
Yeah, again, for the record, Rob Brazel, Chief Assistant County Attorney for litigation. I think I know everyone on this side of the table, and I know Cliff from lawyer things. But nice to meet
For many
the
years.
rest. Yeah, for many years. For many years. I can give you kind of a brief overview of what litigation looks like in our office, and if you have questions, specific things you want me to focus on, as Julia said, I've kind of reviewed minutes and videos and things of that sort, and have a sense of what you might be looking for. But at least within our office, we typically have, depending upon the day, around 700 to 800 open matters of litigation of all different varieties within the division. Probably our biggest volume, as Cliff can attest to, is personal injury, wrongful death type litigation. Our biggest adversary, our most frequent opponent is Morgan & Morgan. It's not close. We see them more than anyone. We've got a pretty steady diet of things coming in with hazards and alleged hazards in the county, whether that's sidewalks, whether that's motor vehicle accidents, you name it. The county operates a lot of public spaces where the public goes and the public trips and the public falls and the public sues us. So we get those frequently.
So I'll stop you real quick, but I've heard that before, that a lot of the county's time and money and effort is spent fighting people tripping on sidewalks or whatever it may be. And maybe we've had this discussion. Cliff fall off over there. Is there legislation being pushed or anything that you guys see coming down the pipe that is trying to fix that problem, or is it just kind of, it is what it is at this point?
Not that I know of. The only legislation that's been going on for years that could have potentially affected us was a change to the sovereign immunity cap. We have a cap on our damages because we're the government.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's been $200,000 per person, $300,000 per occurrence, meaning if multiple people are injured in the same accident, 300,000 is the cap collectively. There have been proposals the last few years to raise it to as high as $2.5 million.
Okay.
None have passed. Last year we got close. There was $1 million potential cap. But essentially, and Brandon probably can attest to this too, it seems to break down at the end because the smaller counties say, if you raise the cap to that, a couple claims and we're going to be bankrupt.
Yeah.
So it hasn't happened, and that's to the county's benefit, quite honestly, that it hasn't happened.
Yeah.
But that's the only legislation that I'm aware of that's affecting our litigation.
Cliff, I know you dropped off for a second. I'm curious to get your opinion. That we're discussing, these Morgan & Morgan and some of these other law firms that come after the county all day for many, many lawsuits. Do you see anything that actually prevents that from happening, or is it just kind of the nature of it all as a big county?
Well, I think it's the nature of it as a county. There's issues in 100 different reasons to have litigation for accidents, for failure to maintain things. There's a lot of different reasons there. The sovereign immunity cap is an antiquated number, and there has been a significant push to expand and bring it into a more reasonable number. And one of the bases for that is that virtually every county that's fiscally responsible has insurance, and the beneficiary of the cap is the insurance companies, because the counties are still potentially responsible for a significant settlement or verdict over the $200,000 if the legislature passes a claims bill, which they do regularly, but it's a long, drawn out process that goes forward. So there are claims that are in excess of the sovereign immunity amount, and it's rare that it happens given the sheer number of claims that are made. But it's there. For instance, the sheriff got hit with $1 million verdict last week from a deputy that was doing 95 miles an hour without his lights and siren on, going to a call for a call that was something pretty minor, and killed a man.
Do we have a rough number on how much the county spends on personal injury, like ballpark, like what we pay out per year?
In terms of
Covered by insurance,
claims, well, no, we're self-insured up to the cap. And we don't have, as Cliff's referring to, we don't have excess insurance.
Okay.
And one of the reasons we don't have excess insurance is because you end up kind of holding out a bag of money for plaintiffs' lawyers to look at and say, oh, I'll have that. I'd like to have that. As opposed to saying, you've got a wrongful death case, the liability may be clear, but we only have 200,000 or 300,000 under the cap to pay you. 9 times out of 10, that settles the case. So then we had a claim years ago when we did have excess insurance, and then we ended up in litigation with the excess carrier because they wouldn't cover the case. They wouldn't cover the claim. So not only do you pay an exorbitant premium for the insurance, but then you end up fighting your own insurance company because they won't provide coverage to a case they clearly should have provided coverage on. So we have been very successful, I would say. I mean, I've been in the office 30 years. I'm only aware of 2 claims bills against the county, and both of them we stipulated to, we agreed to. And in essence, to reduce the number of what the case was worth, we said, okay, we'll agree to a claims bill at a reduced figure. We won't object to it. And we tell Brandon this, luckily. So we're not having, problems.
Well, I guess what I'm asking is, like, per year, can we put a number on how much the county's spending on fighting big personal injury claims and everything? I mean, obviously some are legitimate, but
So,
I mean, some are excessive.
yes, risk management kind of compiles all the claims, and they do a quarterly report to our board. And it kind of varies by quarter and by year. But I don't want to give you a guess as to how much it is that we're paying out. But risk management, we can get those figures for you if you want to see them. They track them more so than we do.
Okay. Yeah, I think, again, give you guys lots of homework all the time when we go to these meetings, but I think it'd be the interesting number. Maybe it's an eye-opening number, because I know that this conversation has happened with how many lawsuits big counties face on a day-to-day, weekly basis from getting thrown at them for people on sidewalks or whatever.
I mean, for the number of sidewalks that we maintain, miles of sidewalk that we maintain, which, by the way, if you stretch them end to end, would go from about here to Los Angeles.
Yeah.
That's the number of linear miles that the county maintains.
Yeah.
I've always thought, in my 30 years in the office, we have a shockingly low number of cases for that kind of situation. And I think what's happening too lately, the board has recently started funding sidewalk maintenance to a little bit higher degree than they did before. There's still a long way to go to make up for all of the older neighborhoods like Carrollwood. Up in Carrollwood Village, we've got a lot of responsibility up there for older sidewalks with trees that are popping up the sidewalks. But the board has stepped up their funding in the last couple of years, which I think has probably helped.
Okay. So sorry to interrupt on that. I know we went off a little bit, but if you want to keep going on the rest of the litigation expense side.
Yeah. So within the office, like, we've got obviously a lot of personal injury, wrongful death claims, but we also have a lot of other things that we're doing. We have a workers' comp lawyer that handles all the workers' comp in-house. And really, in my entire 30 years, I think the office, I can say without fail, has prided itself on keeping everything in our office and not going to hire outside counsel whenever, we feel like it.
Mm-hmm.
So the only areas where we're kind of regularly hiring outside counsel are eminent domain. And that's where we're taking property in order to build a road, in order to have some other project. And that's kind of dependent upon how many projects we have. But sometimes that volume gets to a point where our in-house eminent domain lawyers can't handle all the projects. So we have had a regular flow of outside counsel there. In no other area, really, have we had regular outside counsel. A few years ago, when Commissioner White sued the board over the transportation tax, we obviously had to have outside counsel because we were conflicted out and we couldn't take that case. But other than those, I would say Tom Fessler would probably verify that whatever our outside counsel budget has been, we've stayed under it. And that's because we've really tried to keep everything in-house.
What kind of numbers are we talking about as far as like outside counsel spend?
Depending on the year, it would mostly all be eminent domain. It's probably under 200,000, I would think.
Okay.
Somewhere in there. It's nothing.
Nothing excessive.
I think the whole line item for the budget, I'd have to verify might be 500,000.
Okay.
So it's not even like we're given, lots and lots of money to spend.
Gotcha.
We don't spend it anyway.
Gotcha. Okay.
Would eminent domain include zoning changes or suits over zoning?
No.
That kind of stuff?
So that is part of why we went on kind of this fishing expedition here on the litigation side of things, because I was asked, maybe you haven't answered directly to this one, about Beer Can Island and some of these projects, zoning fights that have been going on for several years now. Do you guys have a general ballpark on like how we're able to track like how much time and resources and ultimately money is spent on individual cases like that?
So on that one specifically, we've never had litigation on Beer Can Island. We never sued anybody. They never sued us.
Yeah.
It was a code enforcement fight where we did hire someone from Gray Robinson to represent the county, because we also sit with the board. So we can't sit with the board and represent staff in a case against the property owner. So we hired someone from Gray Robinson briefly to represent us there, but there's never been litigation other than that on that case. It had no zoning classification, which was the problem. But other than that, there's never been civil litigation involving Beer Can Island. And we don't have, I think this was one of the other areas you were looking at. In private practice, in private law firms, Julia can probably attest to this, there's always a couple cases that are like the albatross of the law firm, and they've been around for 10 years. No one can get rid of them, and they just keep running up fees and hours. I'm not aware of anything we've had that's ever lasted that long. Our cases come and go pretty quickly, and we get on to the next thing. So we don't have anything that really is one of those, oh, this case has been around since I've been here, or no, we really get rid of them pretty quickly.
So the purpose of this committee is efficiency and everything. And that's, kind of why I was trying to ask about what's going on over here on this side of the office. Because, in my conversations with, Julia and everybody else, if I ask like, hey, how long is the county ultimately spending on working on like a zoning issue that's been going on for years? It seems to me like it's not necessarily tracked as a whole, right? It's like, hey, we have this thing. We assign staff to it. We don't assign staff to it. We're kind of done with it. We're done with it. But no one's keeping track of like, hey, we're spending 10% of our time with this, 5% of our time with this, 100 hours on this, 50 hours on this, or anything like that. Like, and then my conversations with like our AI friends nowadays, they're like, well, you could just sync up a calendar to, the hourly rate and all those other kind of things, and you guys would be able to track what you're spending the most time on and what's costing the most, and like which cases are costing the most. So is that something you guys have ever looked into doing?
We don't do that, but I can tell you some years ago when there was some push from someone on the board to outsource some of the work, we did a compilation, I think, of all the hours that we had recorded on all the work that we've done. And we have about 33, 34 lawyers. We determined that our effective hourly rate was about $118 an hour.
Yeah.
So that kind of quickly ended the discussion of going outside, because no law firm can do our work for that price.
Yeah.
Not much less would they have the expertise that we've developed over the years in what we do.
Yeah. And I'm not saying we shouldn't be using the county's lawyers. That's not what I'm driving at here. What I'm driving at is, as kind of like what I sent our technology officer off to go like check subscriptions and access subscriptions and everything. Is there a way for the office to become more efficient in the sense of tracking where it's spending its time and effort, so that it can go back to the county commissioners and say, hey, we're spending a lot of time on this case, Beer Can Island being the example. If you guys would make a political decision over here, we wouldn't have to work on this anymore. So it's not really about the hourly rate that you guys are costing. It's more about efficiency.
Yeah, and there's probably a way to do that, but in those kind of situations, like a beer can island, something like that, the board becomes pretty early on aware of what's going on.
Mhm.
So if they want to make some decision that ends it or cuts it off, they're certainly able to do that from the start.
Yeah.
We don't tell them not to, or, that's really kind of their call. But in the high profile cases like that one and others, we keep them pretty advised from the start of what's going on. Why are we in the litigation? How do we get out of it? What's our best path forward? We give them all that information. And then, as you say, they make the decision on what to do.
Okay.
And I'll just put a little finer point on it I spent 7 years in private practice, having just come back to the county, because I understand what you're saying. When you do that in a private firm, you're doing it for revenue generation. We're not in the business in the county attorney's office of revenue generation. We're in the business of representing clients that need legal services. Is there a way to measure that? Perhaps. I mean, that's a whole other technology conversation. But in terms of the responsibility and ensuring that whether or not you're in a private law firm or a public law firm, or which we are, we have an obligation to inform our clients as to what is happening. And that is part and parcel of our job. So as Rob is saying, what I've observed since I've been back at the county attorney's office is at every point in the time, we have to go back to the Board of County Commission and ask for authority to proceed forward with an action. We can't just independently say we can keep suing. If there's a high profile case and we've been sued, when we're talking personal injury ones, I don't think you probably spend a lot of time. They would have a clogged up agenda of all the personal injury law firms. Those are just kind of cost of doing business when you run public facilities. But bigger, higher profile, we have an ethical obligation to inform them. So at any point in time, if there's a decision that's made from a political perspective, don't proceed forward or proceed forward, that does have to stay in the political realm, because our job as lawyers is just to advise you where your legal risks are, but we can't impose ourselves into the political decision. That would be pretty inappropriate. So that's kind of, but the way we can manage that and the way we have been managing it, from what I can tell, and from when I say what I can tell, what I've seen over years being in this space, going back to the board, making sure they're aware of what's happening and giving them the opportunity to say, don't go in that direction or go in that direction. And some of these conversations are going to be behind the scenes, because we have also, the ethical obligation for confidentiality, as every lawyer does. So, it's not as if, we broadcast our legal opinions.
Sure. Yeah.
And there are certain cases also that the board sometimes probably prefers a litigation outcome than necessarily making a decision.
Mhm.
It's better for them to have the court decide.
I understand that too.
So we may be recommending settlement and saying this is a way out.
Yeah.
And they may be saying, well, in this particular case, let's let the court tell us, what the outcome is, which is fine too.
Yeah, that's understandable. Yeah, like I said, what I've really been driving at here with this whole thing is trying to track efficiency and try to figure out if there is just excess time being spent. And so I just didn't know if it could be implemented as a suggestion, kind of like when we're talking about like with how to be more efficient as a government and kind of utilize new technology and everything. And I kind of had this conversation with Julia that there's kind of ways to track staff now at this point. I'm assuming that's happening in private practice, right? Like, where they're tracking.
They have to.
Well, they have to, because that's how.
Generate a bill.
Yeah, that's how you get paid. So, I mean, it really is, it depends. There's a lot of different models. If you're in certain types of areas of practice, your model is a little bit different. But in terms of just a general revenue generation, there are, law firms, my former law firm included, spends a great deal of their money on very highly specific technology that will allow time to be tracked. But the purpose behind it is every single as a lawyer in private practice, you sell your time. If you've worked with lawyers and had lawyers and you get their bill, you're like, really?
How'd that happen?
Had that happen. But that's what you sell is your time. So they're very highly technology oriented to do so. Is there models that exist for more of a public practice? that's certainly something, worth having a conversation about. But I think your modeling there is different because you're not doing it for the purposes
Yeah.
of revenue generation.
And I think, but because, this is not a private practice and you're not doing it with the mindset of like, how do we be most efficient so we can make the most money? Could it still be applied to government in the sense of, how can we do this to be more efficient as a,
Certainly an interesting conversation to have. And I think, something that could be looked at. It's just, probably not something you can find tomorrow because you're talking about a little bit of a unique set of circumstances. But technology is certainly moving forward. I'm not a technological person. I'm old school, but I do know that exists.
board, Cliff, any other comments on getting the county attorney's office more efficient?
No, I think, in general, they do a pretty decent job of doing things. Obviously, Rob and his litigation team and the county attorney now are managing a huge law firm, and they appear to be doing a decent job of that. We haven't gotten dug into all the specific details, but I haven't heard any horror stories about our legal team taking ridiculous positions that end up costing the county millions of dollars.
Okay.
And that exists in other places.
And then just to close the loop on it, because it was asked by public comment, do we have a ballpark on how much has been spent on Beer Can Island in that process?
From our office, very little, but I don't know the actual number. There's like I said, a code enforcement process that went on. But from our involvement, not very much.
So, I think that speaks to the bigger picture I'm trying to, that's not just the county attorney's office. It's this code enforcement and then all of the rest of the staff resources that are dedicated to something like this. Like if it goes on to being, maybe we're not spending it on legal expenses, but there's this time and effort now over years of multiple departments, agencies, back and forth, emails, all that stuff. And that's not being tracked. And so it's not your fault. I'm not trying to blame you guys here or anything like that. But what I'm seeing is that the county's not tracking how much time it's spending on projects like this in general. That's just my observation on it. And there's no, again, this whole point is efficiency, and there's probably solutions out there to start to track this, like from department to department, and say, we've spent this much time and ultimately this much money on this project and fighting this zoning issue. Everything. That's just my takeaway. Maybe I'll figure out how to word that into a report at some point, but that's just my observation here. Any other comments from board?
I had a legal question, if I'm allowed to ask it now.
Depends on what it is. Do you need advice or you?
No. I wanted to ask a question on the unconscious bias training from our legal team. Because I understand these numbers are very low. I think that was one of the due outs from last month. Do you know if any of these actually went to litigation? Were these actual Title VII violations or Equal Employment Opportunity Commission complaints that came back with a right to sue or anything like that?
I'm not sure I'm familiar with what's on the list, but if there were names associated with those, we could certainly look
It
those
just
up.
says, these are the number of racial claims worked. I'm just not sure what that means.
Okay, yeah. If we had some more detail, we could probably look at that and see if they became EEOC charges or litigation or what have you. That's another area, that you bring it up, where as many employees as the county has, which I think is in the 5,000 to 6,000 range, the number of pieces of employment litigation that we have are really, really small, really, really low for the number of employees that are being terminated or demoted or whatever's happening to them that could be a basis for a lawsuit. We have one litigator in my team that handles essentially all of the employment litigation, and he probably only spends maybe a quarter to a third of his time on that, and the rest of the time is on personal injury, wrongful death. So all of the employment litigation is essentially being handled by a quarter or a third of a lawyer. So that's not a lot given how many employees and how many employee actions there are.
Yeah, that's very good. We were just, I think this was a spinoff question about, funds spent for training, you know, and if that's actually mitigating risk, if the juice is worth the squeeze, and if it's, you know, if there's any trends or data that can support the dollar figure behind it, so.
Yeah, and we can look at that if there's, like I said, if there's specific names or situations, we can look those up and see if they resulted in anything and how far they went.
Just one thought, not being a lawyer, I think I defer to Rebecca and Cliff on these kind of items, but I am curious on if someone could just give me maybe a 2 or 3 minute summary of the Apollo Beach situation. I live in Apollo Beach. I've been to Beer Can Island 100 times over the years, and I'm just a brief update on that because it has come up a couple of times with me as well as the emails. If somebody is just a 2 or 3 minute summary of where we are, what the issue is.
Oh, where we are, like just with their zoning issue?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think our office is involved in that at the moment, so I'm not sure what the status of it is at a staff level. But I don't think there's anyone in our office that's working on it.
Yeah, might be outside the scope of our DOGE committee
Yeah,
right now, but again, that's why I'm trying to dig at how much time has been spent on this thing.
The only thing
That's why I
would say
said
is
2 or 3
did,
minutes.
you know, just do a brief Google search of newspaper
Yeah.
articles and
Okay.
But the last one I saw was that the hurricanes created some pretty devastating results of what was already on the island. And I think they were trying to decide how they wanted to proceed forward. But, you know,
It's now half.
the big
half the
issue that they
size.
face is they really got to go figure out how they want to proceed forward on their zoning, on their comprehensive plan, land use plan, designation, and that application has never really been processed.
It's very complicated. Like when you really start to get in legally,
Yes, they can. It's like no
it's
2 or
like
3 minute summary.
No,
I
it's
just want to
it's-
distract this group, but it keeps coming up. So,
It-
and I've been there 100 times. I really know.
I'm only using it as an example because it was
Yeah.
brought to us by the owners and it was brought to us as something that's like been around for so long. And it's just one of these cases that like constantly gets brought up. That's the only reason kind of
Didn't they sell it or attempt to sell
they
it?
try, but it
Yes.
hasn't been sold.
They have.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can buy shares in it, I understand too. That's why I wanted to understand. I don't know that there's a lot of demand there. They say it's half the size that it was
Yeah.
before those storms and diminishing noticeably over the.
Yeah. Any more, anything else on the report from the county attorney's side of things?
I think that probably covers us.
Okay. All right. Hopefully what I'm trying to ask you guys about is well received and well intentioned. I'm not trying to pick on you guys. I don't think you're like the most inefficient agency out here. If I brought in everybody and we grilled them for hours on like how efficient they are, I'm sure we could find some fairly inefficient ones. It's just more of a, you know, when you talk about legal expenses, I think people are concerned at like how high that these things go and what does it look like, but I'm not trying to pick on you guys. Okay, so the materials requested at the October 6th meeting. HR training, unconscious bias stuff, call center information. So it's all in this.
Yeah. I was in
Should
here,
we,
got it up.
I mean, I was happy to see that this number of racial claims in human resources was pretty low, you know, 2 a year, 1 a year, 6 in 2019. I mean,
And it doesn't appear that it was escalated.
yeah, I mean, well, I could create a headline that says it went up 600%, you know, in 2019 based on our stuff. But yeah, it's 6 is not very many. But that's interesting still. And then this customer call center information. Any other discussion from staff or from the board on these materials that were handed out, the HR stuff, the conscious bias call center?
I know we discussed last month about if there was a professional development policy or a training policy. So I guess I can presume that it probably doesn't exist. Is that probably, since it wasn't included?
Circle back up and get the answer to that, please.
Okay. I remember she was very well versed on the process. It just,
Oh,
it's like, okay, like, is there an actual standard operating procedure or something, you know, that we could glean from?
Let me ask her, and if it is, I'll push it out to the committee to email, okay?
And then the customer call center information, if refresh my memory, was that a public comment that somebody had brought that up at the call
Yes,
center?
there was somebody had sent in saying that there wasn't a question, it was more an observation that there needed to be more than one call center. So this clarifies that there's a tiered call center structure. There's a primary call center, tier 1, where there are general questions. And if that initial call center can handle it, fantastic. And then if it gets to be more technical, then it can be pushed to the individual department to answer a technical question. So that's just trying to provide clarification for you all. That's how the call center structure is here.
Okay. Great.
This did raise one question with me in that public works, you can understand code enforcement, of course, and then pet resources. Would this be, for lack of a better term, wild animal resources as well? If there's an alligator or a raccoon in somebody's yard or that kind of thing, or this is specifically pet related?
But they handle, it's animal control.
Control.
It's pet resources broadly, but it's animal control at its core.
Yeah.
So let's say somebody calls in and just is looking for, where do I go to adopt a pet? A tier 1 call center can handle it.
Yeah.
But
Right.
let's say you're calling in and I'm having problems with my water meter or something like that. That's a technical, that's then gets pushed to the tier 2.
So it goes, and it's moved from tier 1 to the water service.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
what
it's not, before that, you had multiple departments running multiple call centers and you weren't able to gauge and measure what each one of them were doing. Could that have been handled more efficiently at a singular level, at a tier 1 level for more efficiency? So that's why the structure exists.
Yeah.
And this is just simply trying to provide a little context, because both of those comments that came in last month, yeah, this one in particular wasn't a question, but communications wanted to at least give you some context.
Yeah, I was just surprised because it's pet resources. I thought, gee, why wouldn't you call it animal control or something like that? It's what do people need assistance with pets other than just they want to adopt?
Well, let's say you surrender a pet. So
Yeah.
they handle surrenders, that they're not placed on the street and made into strays. They also pick up strays. There's also dealing with dangerous animals and then there's where there's cases involved with abuse. They have to take in and house those animals until that's adjudicated. So there's multiple facets to what pet resources is.
Yeah.
Do we have an alligator wrangler on staff, or do we share it with other counties?
That's a good question.
I've met him before at some point. They're pulled up at a gas station with a guy with 5 alligators in his truck. I think they share. We share it with other counties or something. We do have. We have one.
Yeah, tons of lakes and rivers and opportunities, and
It wasn't in the contracts that I saw. At least wasn't labeled that way.
that's a definite discussion.
Yeah. Okay. I want to move on from the HR stuff, if that is okay with the rest of the board, unless anybody else had any other questions on it. Okay, new business. I'll open it up to the rest of the board real quick. Does anybody have any new business that they want to go over right now? And then I'm going to take over on other things. Okay. So, I guess this isn't technically new business, but some of the stuff that we've talked about in the past few months, like the software subscription controls and anything, is there any additional new information on any of that that's being worked on at a staff level?
I think we provided as much information as we had at the time.
Okay. So we've motioned earlier in this meeting to put out a statement, at least, for our feelings on what's going on right now at the state level. In my conversations with everybody around, I think that we need to basically put out our own report at this point going into January, possibly, but where we do before the meeting, speaking in front of the county commission and basically say, look, if we, so let's make a statement this week that says, hey, we're very hamstrung by the fact that we don't have a state report yet. But I think by next month, we should be releasing our own report as my opinion from what we've found, and say, hey, if the state hasn't given us anything, here's what we've seen. And that's my feeling on this, because we're going to keep running around in circles, asking staff for things here and there. And I think I mean, I feel like within a month or two, we kind of were able to point at a bunch of stuff and say, hey, there's things here to look at, and the county commissioner should know where it is. The public should know where it is. So I'm of the opinion that we should be releasing something in January with the, kind of a full write-up. So the rest of the board can tell me how you feel about it.
Good with that. I think that's reasonable.
Yeah, I
We
think
can
it's a
do-
good idea. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. This is Cliff.
Go ahead, Cliff.
I think it's a good idea. I'd like to see us at least have a meeting to go over the various
Sure.
items we want to put in the report and specifically discuss that. And obviously, it's got to be a full and open meeting. So I think it'd be a great idea to put that on the agenda to prepare and start putting together a report in February or January with the intention of releasing it in February.
Okay, I like that idea. So, to go over a timeline here, we can put out a statement now that basically says we're still waiting on a state report. If we don't get a state report, we're just going to proceed forward with a report in January that we're going to go over publicly in the meeting, and then we'll formally release it in February. Does that sound like a?
And I think it's a
decent
good idea
timeline?
to ask. I think it's a good idea to ask for additional public comment in the meantime.
Yeah. As far as asking for more public comment, what access do we have to be able to do that? I mean, you guys give us some social media post or press release.
Give me the page, and that's pretty unusual to have, put your ideas here when
Yeah.
it's really outside the scope of what you're even
Sure.
needed to do.
Yeah.
I talked to communications, and I was reminded that, communications doesn't advertise boards and councils and committees. And so it was really not within the scope of what they would normally do. And so there's really no advertising to be done here. So if y'all are talking about, your meetings are advertised, if they meet sunshine,
Yeah.
everyone's aware you're having your meetings. I think that's kind of where we're at the moment. And so, again, even that webpage is unusual for
Yeah.
the length that we go to.
Yeah.
We don't have no other board or committee has a idea page that's.
Yeah. Tip line.
Of what we do. I mean,
Yeah.
your job here is to report, work with us, replying to the state, and then give your opinion on the state, where all the stuff that we've been providing is really not even, there's no state report to even reply to.
Sure.
We're trying to be helpful and trying to provide information to you all, but it really isn't even in the scope of that. So
Yeah.
it's kind of just where we're
Yeah.
sitting.
And yeah, I do want to, clarify. I'm aware that, we are expanding a little bit outside of like what the original intention was with just a liaison to the state, but obviously there's no liaison we had.
We also have to be careful too, because the board is giving us direction. We have to abide by board direction too.
Yeah.
So, we're trying to be respectful of what they've told us that they want you to do,
Mhm.
and be respectful of, of your time and answering good questions and being responsive to you too. So I hope you understand the balance that staff is trying to walk here too.
Yeah. And I think from our standpoint as, the board and as the chair of the board, people are also looking at this without the understanding of, well, what's happening. And then, I get people that call me and say, well, Elon shut down DOGE and, DC. Wait, does that mean you guys are shut down? Obviously, these are totally different things. So there's a little bit of an expectation of us to do something. And what I do not want to do is leave this thing where we've met for 6, 8 months and we come back with nothing and say, well, we never got a report from the state. And I think it's prudent on us, to the taxpayers and to the commission and to everybody, and everyone's time is spent here, that we produce something. Right. So, and I don't think it's out of the scope of us to create something and then do a presentation at a county commission meeting. I think that's within the scope of everything.
I would suggest that
Yeah.
if you do produce something, you provide it in writing and submit it to them in that manner,
Sure.
and then let them absorb it.
Depends on how much of a scene we want to cause, right?
Yeah, I think it's a good too. I'd like to pursue in more cases. I've brought this up before, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but when we saw that the state was taking a while to complete that, and we are kind of hamstrung by, because many of the key areas they have focused on very thoroughly, and we think we're going to get good stuff that we could then comment on. But once we get the contracts database, I looked at just 4 areas that they didn't seem to cover very much: fire rescue, economic development, affordable housing, and homeless services. And I read a bunch of these contracts, and I still like the idea of doing post audits in some of these large contracts. So we would have a more detailed level. At this point, what I could say about these areas is that I think that there, in some cases, is inefficiencies in that there's multiple, even 4 or 5 levels of reporting, so that money which is supposed to be spent to do something is spent on salary and wage at various levels of so-called nonprofits, and as well as administrators. And so I can make a general suspicion like, gee, it looks like there's kind of a lot of waste and inefficiency here, but I'd like to know it better. And if I did say a lot of there were reporting requirements in these big projects, some of which were $1.5 million, I could understand it and say, well, here's where it is. And it's not so much to find fault. It could well be that if the money comes from the federal government, they say, well, you have to do this. And so, or there's no money. It could be a legitimate thing, but it looks like there's just levels and levels of reporting. And so that maybe not much, or a smaller proportion gets through to actually doing the project. I think I see that, having read 8 or 10 of these large contracts and kind of look, but I'd really like to look up a level lower, Brandon, without requiring anything that doesn't already exist, to go to affordable housing and say, well, gee, here are these quarterly reporting requirements. How can I see those for these projects are just recently completed, and it's millions of dollars? And I think right now I would say to the board, with the commission, you should look here. It looks like this is very inefficient, but I'd like to know better. And I think I'm willing to do more research at a lower level, fully accompanied by I don't want to make new work.
Brandon, do you have any
for anyone
suggestions on how to do what Bob is asking here?
Again, it's staff interpretation.
Yeah.
That is very much outside the scope of what's panel to do.
Yeah.
And that's where it's at. I mean, the state did come in, they did interviews with affordable housing, with economic development, others. So that would be incorporated in their findings.
Right.
Again, the liaison committee it's just that liaise with us in responding to the state and in responding to anything the state produces. You were here when they came and made the in-person presentations.
Yeah.
Your contact information and such was shared with the state as requested. You have all copies of communications that we've had with the state. You have every bit of data that was provided to the state. You have been completely alongside in all communication and all interaction, and continue to be so, as silence or otherwise. So that's where it says in the board and panel, the liaison committee to do those things. And that's that's the structure. We have to abide by it too. And so, that's where it's at.
I do understand that. And these are areas that were not heavily in the state. I picked these because they weren't state, and maybe there's something they can add. And the other thing too is I hate to,
even before they came to the index, and they pulled tons of data.
Yeah.
We're not sure precisely what they reviewed and if they're even done reviewing. Remember, all that data was transmitted. That doesn't mean it was a one-time review. There could be other reviews that take place. We don't fully know. So I just wanted to give you context. It wasn't just
fair enough.
They were here. There was the very first tranche was 6 to 8 pages of data, and that's what you have on your access to as well.
Yeah.
Just wanted to clarify that.
Cliff, I see your hand raised over there.
Yeah, if I could, that's one of the reasons I wanted to have this meeting next month to discuss these various areas, because I agree with Bob there. There are issues that I think that, given the original intent of the committee to be the liaison with the state and the fact that the state hasn't done anything, I would like to reach out to the commission to broaden our role to be able to do exactly what Bob's talking about, and be able to report back to say, here are areas that we believe that the commission can be more effective in spending taxpayers' dollars. Because I think that's what ultimately, when I talked to commissioners before this committee was formed, that's where they were looking, and then things kind of changed because the CFO came in and was going to do his DOGE, and initially, we were told it was going to be done and we'd have something in October, and obviously that didn't happen. November didn't happen. December has come and gone from our meeting, and we still don't have anything. And if you look at what has been produced in other areas, there's not a lot of detail. It's more splash in criticisms by the CFO than any specific recommendations as to how to save money. And I don't want to be critical of that process, because we really don't know what they're doing. But I would like to think that the original intent of this committee, when it was first discussed a year and a half, 2 years ago, was to do exactly what Bob's talking about. And then that was modified because of the state's involvement. So I think that's something that we can discuss in our next meeting, and perhaps what you were talking about in going to the commission and having a discussion and ask that our job be expanded to include looking at these things and making recommendations that the state has not done at this point.
Cliff, what is there any specific asks that you would like to see if we were to go to the commission and ask for an expansion of what the intent of this committee is?
Well, I think that, as I said, I think the initial intention of this committee, in talking to commissioners long before any of this was formalized, was that this be a committee that goes and does exactly what Bob was describing and what you've done in a number of areas, and Amanda's done in some areas, and Leslie, and to look at where money may have been spent in the past or continue to be spent that is not justified, that there's multiple entities that are getting county money and having staff do the same thing, that economies of scale could be used by having one, a lot of different potential things that I think we haven't really specifically looked at in detail yet, because it hasn't been our job. And I think that, we ought to give the commission a chance to say, okay, we don't have what we were thinking we were going to get from the state. Let's let our committee go out there and look at this and bring that information to us.
Yeah.
If they want. If they don't want, they can tell us that at that point.
I agree with you. I mean, Cliff and the rest of the board here, would you guys want to include that general ask in the statement that we're looking to make this week about how we have not received anything from the state? So this statement essentially say that we have not received anything from the state. We're frustrated with the state's process, and actually we'd like to expand what we should be able to do locally. Do you want that to be the gist of the letter that we're putting out?
I'd be in favor of that.
Amanda, any thoughts?
Sure. I mean, I certainly want to be able to add value wherever we can. And, it's almost like we're sitting around waiting. So I would be happy to do with what the committee decides in that regard. And if there's something we can do while we're waiting, I'm all for that.
Okay. I just want to strike the right tone I know how I would write this, but I want to strike the right tone with the entire board, that there's a sense of frustration on what we can and can't do here, that we've been, kind of slow rolled on a lot of different things, and that there's an intention here by everybody here is volunteering their time because they really want to dig in on things, and we just don't feel like we can actually dig in on things or even, get into the stuff we're trying to get into.
Short of that, you're just kind of casting aspersions. You're thinking, gee, there may be inefficiencies here, there may be here. This is a number. And I don't like to cast aspersions lightly here. Whereas, let me give you a happy example for fire rescue. What I'm talking about is I was reading through the contract and there's a fire rescue boat moored at Land's End in Apollo Beach. And somewhere it came up, gee, that's a high-end place. They're paying too much. But so I went, I said, gee, I know where that place is. So I went. Sure enough, I have a picture. There's the fire rescue boat right in a slip, appropriate size. I went to the office. I said, hey, what's it cost me to rent a slip? It's these dimensions. And they're doing a good job. They're paying the average rates that you would pay, and they need something stationed in the southern part of the bay. And so, by just doing a simple audit like that, I can say that they seem to be, at least in that one case, you do 2 or 3 of those, you see a pattern. Hey, they're doing pretty well. We don't need to make, criticism. Whereas in other cases, like this affordable housing, there were milestones and written reports that I'm sure they have in a group there. And then we can say, gee, it really is kind of inefficient at so many levels. But, at this point, we'd have to say, well, we think there are, and then it may not, I wish I understand it more before I would cast aspersions on a group and say, look, here's inefficiencies. That's what I'm talking about, trying to be fair and knowledgeable in the thing. Just an example,
Okay. I think I generally know where the board sits on all this stuff, and hopefully I'll put together a comment this week and we can go back and forth on what we want our statement to be over this week. But
Yeah, I don't think anybody's bashful about making comments, so I think that's appropriate.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And I'll still do it. It's just, if Melinda's group has done some of this already, boy, it would be good to know that there might be knowledge there, and the functioning departments too would, be able to give input. And again, nothing that doesn't already exist, because reading the contract, these are 80-page contracts, and there's forms for reporting quarterly, and it goes through, through many hands. And I just thought, geez, it looks to me like, but maybe there's some, things.
That's true.
Mitigating factors that you don't want to, I think if we can report with more substance, other than just, hey, this looks like it might be.
Yeah. Okay.
I hesitate to do that too.
So I think we've got a little bit of a plan here on how we want to proceed. My next piece of new business, and I'm going to take us off on a whole nother possible tangent here. When we were talking about some of this HR conversations, national conversation, statewide conversation that's going on right now with new hires and promotions and everything, does the county participate in hiring anyone on like an H-1B visa, or do they do any sort of like out hiring in that capacity? I know it's not maybe necessarily a question for.
I'll triple check. This came up not too long ago, and I think the answer was no.
Okay.
I'll triple check, and I can send that out to you all, but I have the answer for that.
Yeah, I don't know how often it's used in a county level, county government, public and everything. I seriously don't think so. Okay. Yeah, just given the scope of the way the politics is going right now in our state, I think it would be a bad look if we did have that process and we were spending money on that. People not hire people internally. So I'll leave that one at that. Just maybe we get a solid answer for that by the next meeting.
Yeah,
It's just
that's an easy.
a solid, absolutely not. Yeah, that'd be great. Any other new business before I go into scheduling this next meeting? Okay, so let's look at next month into January as to when we can get ready for this meeting, because I would like everybody on the board here to bring something really, be prepared to bring something to the table here, because we're going to talk about putting together some level of highlights of what we've found here. If our intention is to go into January with, here's some things that we found, and here, they need to be high level. We've identified this stuff. So if everybody can kind of compile everything you've worked on personally, whatever it is that you think is really important to include in into that report in January. There's a little bit of homework on
Sure.
this next month over the holidays and everything. So what does it, maybe the 6th is a little too early. So they've their, when's their county commission meeting next in January? Is it 21st? Okay. So I would say, how does the 13th of January look for everybody on that Tuesday?
Oh, that's a Tuesday. Yeah,
Or do we usually we usually do Tuesdays, right?
yeah, that's good.
I have a conflict on that day. An important appointment in the afternoon. I'm just not sure that I
Okay.
can make it. It's so still new.
Yeah,
I also don't mind.
I've got a conflict on Tuesday also. Thursday would work perfect for me, the 15th.
15th.
That works.
I'm also. Will we have any major updates on anything after that county commission meeting? There's no because I know we're talking about like the indigent healthcare workshop. I mean, that's in February, though, right?
That's all later on. That's all stuff we can send to you absent a meeting. So the only things that we're bringing back to you from this meeting is, so Rebecca's question about the HR training.
Yeah.
Standard operating procedures or policies, and then the H1N1 question. But from a staff perspective, that's all we have.
Do you, when's their February? When's the board meeting in February? Of February? And the 18th. Okay. Well, how does our board here feel about maybe meeting later in January then, like the 27th, that Tuesday after, let them come back from vacation and let them get through a meeting in January, and that gives the state another, is it 6, 7, 8 weeks?
Right.
Before we, come out with our own report. And then that gives us 2 meetings in February to possibly speak to them. But we can prepare and ask still in the statement that we're going to be doing right now to, we could maybe prepare that before January, the January meeting. Or Cliff, or do you want to try to get this in before the January meeting?
It's up to you. I'm good either way. I just can't do the 13th.
Okay. What's the rest of the board think about trying to fit in a meeting before January, their January meeting, or do you want to meet after their January meeting and aim for February?
I mean, I'm open to whatever you guys want to do. I'm not available on the 15th, but I am on the 13th and the 27th.
Okay. Any other opinions?
Yeah, I'll be available if it's a Tuesday or Thursday, I'll make myself available.
Okay. Brandon, any thoughts on timing here?
If you all want to set a meeting for the 27th to, again, based on circumstances and provide, the venue for putting together a report for it, that makes perfect sense. You obviously want to submit that report in writing to the board. They'll digest it when they digest it.
Mhm.
I'll tell you their December meeting's a nightmare. I mean, they've got 200 agenda items this coming meeting. So
Yeah.
they're going to be, and there's only one meeting in January. So
Yeah.
their meetings will be pretty full on those two.
Yeah.
Logistically, I don't see a problem with any of the dates you're suggesting.
Okay. Well, again, if we're going to go and try to expand, ask the county to expand what this board is able to do, does it make sense to have all this stuff prepared beforehand, or, in January, or does it make more sense for February? I don't think we're getting anything done before their December meeting with 200 agenda items.
That's sort of.
Do we have any idea what the state's timeline is? Or is it we're just in wait mode and
No.
they're not talking until,
I mean, I would make the assumption that they're not getting it done in December. That's my assumption.
it could be that they have a year-end deadline and they rush it through and we get it December 30th. It might be something like that. I might.
That would be
We have
surprising
no,
to me,
I'm
but-
just speculating.
Oh,
I have no
there-
basis.
There's no indication that they're doing these detailed reports that we'd be looking at for counties other than the ones that the CFO is personally attacking.
Yeah.
That's just my thought.
If they had,
Yeah,
if they were releasing hey, we got Broward counties back and here's the full detail,
Yeah.
we'd go, oh man, like, okay, they're going one by one and doing it, but
Yeah.
I don't know if we're gonna get
All right.
one at all,
Yeah.
quite frankly, at this
I was
point.
gonna say,
Yeah.
I don't even know that it exists. I almost believe this was an agenda item to remove property taxes in November, the vote.
Yeah. Well, it's a high level
Yeah.
exercise, right? You know, oh, this is the big number. I think we really can do a lot of good here if we were to dig into those numbers and specifically like we have been. And there are a lot of identifiable, actionable items out there for these counties. And, we just need to be able to do something with it. So to go back to timeline wise, then I'm going to say, let's put out our, statement this week or next week, whenever it may be, on what we're looking for. And then January's meeting is the 21st. I'm trying to make sense of this a little bit, but I'm almost leaning towards doing like the 27th of January so that we can let them get through the beginning of the year, and we can aim for a February, because there's a February 4th meeting. And then if we need anything additional, there's one like 2 weeks later right there. So I think that timing wise, I'm gonna say January 27th. Does that work for everybody?
I think that makes sense.
Okay, 10 a.m.
That works for me.
Cliff, January 27th, 10 a.m.
Perfect.
Okay. Okay. Put it in my calendar now.
So
do
does
I need a
this
motion?
mean that we are not having a meeting on the 6th?
No, I don't want to do a meeting on the 6th if we're going to do on the 27th. It's too close to New Year's. I don't think we're going to get their attention on the first January meeting with what we're trying to do here.
Probably won't know any more than we know now, because we're in the thick of the high season of the holidays.
Yeah.
Things aren't.
So let's put this in my calendar now. All right. Do I need a motion for the meeting, or do I already got one?
You're just making a request to get
Okay.
that scheduled.
Any new business on staff side that you guys want to go over with everything that we talked about today? All right. There's no public comment. There's nobody on. Did anyone give us any emails or anything? Emails kind of stopped. Yeah. Brandon, to the point that we were making earlier about how we were able to get like one social media post, and like we get a page, which is like with a tip line, and that's a little bit different than a lot of the other boards get to have. I wish that there was more of an effort by the communications staff to put this stuff out there. Like, I think that there's kind of an effort to not get them,
I would respectfully, it's not the case.
Yeah.
It's a consistent policy. There are.
Oh, I know it's consistent.
Tons of
Yeah.
boards and councils. If they were trying to push social medias or push promotion of this to the disadvantage of this or this, it would then turn into something they just couldn't keep up with. There's only so much bandwidth. And remember, the communications team covers 30 some odd departments.
Yeah, but you were saying that they don't even, but they're not promoting, you said, even board meetings and.
No, your board meetings, all those things are pushed out.
Yeah.
You're certainly noted. We make sure you're in compliance and that it's on community count. It's all out there. But in terms of going out and saying, hey, give your ideas to this group.
Come in and give public comments.
Don't do that for any of them. No.
Yeah.
Just again, from a bandwidth perspective, there's only so many people in comms, and it's just a giant organization. It's a giant county. So it's no disrespect.
No, I don't think it's specifically mine. I think it's, I just think it's.
Please don't think that.
Yeah.
There's only so many slots.
Okay. All right. If there's no public comments, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I did have one, I wanted to make sure that was on the record that, we find out if any of the complaints went to the EEOC. I want to just make sure that was a do. I don't know if that's legal or if that's HR. I'm not sure. Imagine legal would probably know, but
What was your concern?
any of the, racial complaints went to the EEOC.
Okay.
Yeah, if they were elevated outside of the county.
Okay.
We're just trying to figure out risk here. I am anyway.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, meeting is adjourned. See you guys back here at the end of January. Happy
Happy-
holidays.
Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and whatever else.
Yeah. Happy New Year too, guys.
Yeah. And then you guys will hear from me soon on some sort of statement this week. Hopefully I'm not in surgery. Oh, you missed my, my whole speech about me
Oh,
tearing
geez.
my Achilles.
Holy cow.
Fire, there was a dog. Sorry.
Came running in.
Really? Oh, all right.
No, I was playing my football and I just,
Oh, yeah.
I just ran and cut.
Well,
It's great. Very calm.
that's,